Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson, joined by my Natalie-attired co-host, Matt Fortuna. He's in Chicago. I'm in South Bend, back from my sojourn around the Midwest, South Bend to West Lafayette to Oxford, back to South Bend. So, Matt, it's I don't know. You want to get into the swag that you've got on there?
Yeah, let's start with some personal news, as they like to say, although this will affect all of our listenership for the better. We have swag. We have merch. We've got questions about it. We've had questions about it ourselves. Thanks to our friends at Obvious Shirts. We have merch. There is a website active right now online where you can purchase it. You can find it at obviousshirts.com. If you want the direct link, it's obviousshirts.com/collection/the-independent-podcast. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, quarter zips like I'm wearing now. I have a couple more I can show our viewers right now live on YouTube. We have a couple of different sayings that you can find on the website right now. Saturday 3:30, one of my favorites, given the Irish schedule. Another nice one, logo sweatshirt. So yeah, you can look for these. Hopefully we'll be wearing them around Notre Dame Stadium. Hopefully you'll be wearing them around Notre Dame Stadium on game days once you order. So thanks to the team at Obvious Shirts for collaborating with the Independent on this. And we're excited to finally unveil it to the public.
I think we should definitely get a Saturday 3:30 in parentheses only on Peacock. I'm not sure that would be a big seller though. But this week, not only on Peacock.
Green one for Irish Red Green, right?
We're still a week away from the Peacock only game for Notre Dame against Louisville. This week, Notre Dame hosts Miami of Ohio. Our old friend Chuck Martin, who was nice enough to host me for a couple days down in Oxford this week and sit down for an interview for our show. I'll have a big story, sort of a behind the scenes, early next week on The Athletic. You can check that out. Be with them a little bit this weekend as well around the game. But Miami of Ohio, perhaps not a marquee opponent, but considering the way that this season has gone, nobody in the MAC should be overlooked for Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting to sort of see how Notre Dame, to quote Marcus Freeman, handles success after reducing Purdue to a Division III program last weekend.
The quote that stood out to me from Marcus Freeman's Monday press conference, I'll read it verbatim, quote, "It can't take a loss to have the mentality we have to have mentally and physically to prepare the right way for an opponent," end quote. I know that sounds obvious, but yes, that's kind of been the MO of this program the last 3 years, unfortunately. One kind of funny note I found just going through Miami, Ohio's game notes. I'm sure you have a lot more to share about this program than I do, given where you just came from. We made a lot of fun of Notre Dame for playing 4 Group of 5 opponents this year. You know the 3 winningest Group of 5 programs of all time?
Oh, of all time? I'm assuming Miami is one of them. I know that Miami has the best MAC conference record since midway through 2016. I think they're 42-17.
All time, too, I think. Wins.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe they're all time. Who else makes the cut?
So all time wins among Group of 5 programs. Number 1, Navy, 740. Number 2, Army, 729. Number 3, Miami, 724. Not on that list is Northern Illinois, who already beat Notre Dame. So maybe the schedule's a little tougher than we were giving it credit for coming into this season. But
maybe there is something to that. But there's so much Notre Dame crossover this weekend. Obviously, Chuck Martin is a part of that, but their offensive coordinator and defense coordinator, Bill Brecken, is on defense. Pat Welsh on offense. They both were sort of GA interns on the 2012 team here at Notre Dame. Gus Ragland worked under Tommy Rees in the quarterback's room. Corey Brown, defensive line coach at Miami, Ohio, was sort of in the GA intern analyst role here at Notre Dame. And Robert Blanton, former Notre Dame defensive back, is the defensive backs coach or the safeties coach at Miami, Ohio. And on top of that, you've got Roy Roundtree is the receivers coach, who Chuck Martin joked he almost did not hire because he caught the game-winning pass against Notre Dame.
You named your son after that quarterback, right?
Yeah, in 2011. And then it's a stretch, but I believe Mitchell is their cornerbacks coach, who played at Michigan State. And when I was in their staff meeting room, I asked him when he played. He's like, "Oh, I was on the 2010, 2011 team." I was like, "Oh, Little Giants." And Chuck Martin just kind of rolled his eyes at that one too. So
14 years ago today, I believe. I saw that.
A lot of crossover between Notre Dame and Miami. Aside from the biggest one is Ara Parseghian, Miami alum and former head coach there. There's a statue of him outside the stadium and outside the stadium here in South Bend. So it's as I know people have banged on Notre Dame for playing MAC schools, but if there is a MAC school that has history that like actually dovetails nicely with Notre Dame, it 100% is Miami.
Yeah, we try to get Andrew Hendricks, former Notre Dame and Miami quarterback, on this podcast this week. He's busy like saving lives and stuff, doing like stuff well beyond the realm of football that he's absolutely qualified for. But we did get Chuck Martin. You sat down with him. We will air that interview in its entirety here shortly.
I did before I said, I was like, Chuck, just so you know, this is on a podcast, so you're gonna have to like, moderate the language a little bit.
I was pleasantly surprised there was not a single curse word dropped.
Yeah, it was at my request, because like the rest of my time there was, I would just say like Chuck Martin. If you're a media member listening to the show who covered him, or a Notre Dame fan who enjoyed his press conferences from 2010 to 2013, he has not changed at all, which I found totally endearing. I had a great time there, just sort of getting behind the scenes, getting into the game plan, watching film with them, going through practice scripts. It was a pretty interesting, roughly 72 hours there in Oxford.
I always like the story I would share that encapsulated Chuck Martin perfectly, at least relative to everyone else at Notre Dame at the time, was, I want to say 2012, the undefeated season. There's a bye week. They make the coordinators available to speak to the media. And I think it was the only time they spoke in season. And so you got Chuck Martin, you've got Bob Diaco, and Bob comes out with like the perfectly placed hair. He's got a sweater, collared shirt. That was when he went off about when he found out there were cameras in the locker room post game, well before like that was like the norm with social media. And it just felt a little tense. And then Chuck Martin comes out. And keep in mind, Notre Dame had the second best defense in the country that year. Notre Dame's offense was a work in progress, to put it nicely. And Chuck comes out in shorts, flip-flops, was like, "Yeah, guys, what do you want?" And it was just like, it's like you're at the bar with him, but more or less. Like, he's just one of the guys. He's eternally one of the guys. And I imagine he got a similar vibe being around him the last 3 days as well.
Yeah, he wore shorts and flip-flops pretty much the whole time I was there. Had the bucket hat. Bob Diaco looks like he's going to a Lexus December to Remember sales event. Chuck Martin is like, he when he went to his Monday press conference, he had to change out of sort of gym shorts and flip-flops by putting on khaki pants and then putting on socks and then putting his flip-flops back on. So he is one of a kind. One of the questions that I asked him in the interview was just like, it was about his relationship with Mike Denbrock. They're very close. And Denbrock was asked about Chuck this week. I talked to Chuck about Denbrock over the summer for a story. And they're both like two of the incredibly normal people in an industry that does not allow normal people for the most part. It just chews them up and spits them out. So fortunate to have covered both at Notre Dame, obviously, and then spending his last few days at Miami of Ohio was pretty enlightening. I think people will really enjoy sort of kind of peeling back the onion of like what game planning is all about, and just sort of like what it's like to sort of lead a program, but try to kind of maintain who you are at the same time. And like, he's done it for 11 years there incredibly well. And I mean, there was a point he was 5-25 as a head coach at Miami in year 3. And we talk about year 3 all the time at Notre Dame. Like that's a sign, just empirically that things are not going well. He believed that they were. The fact they were playing their 4th-string quarterback had something to do with it too. But they start 0-6 and then become the first program and the only program ever in college football history to start 0-6 and finish 6-6. And one of the memento, they won, I think, the MAC East that year. But one of the mementos that, you go into Chuck's office, there's not a lot of like high production, fancy stuff. Like on his whiteboard, it still says beat BGU or BGSU Bowling Green that his daughter wrote there last October. It's the only thing like written on his whiteboard. But one of he's just like, I don't have a lot of like knickknacks and tchotchkes, but like, he's like, this matters a lot to me. And it was a football signed by Ara Parsegian, congratulating him on that 2016 season where he like turned it around and they won the East. So yeah, he's an interesting guy. Really enjoyed my time down there, like I said. But I mean, this weekend he said it's like, look, I'm a Notre Dame fan 365 days a year, except for this one day on Saturday. And he's like, I'd rather just go watch a game there than coach a game there. It's I think the concept of coming back to coach a game in Notre Dame, while unique, is not something that I think he relishes a whole lot. But from Notre Dame's point of view, this is a game that we'll be able to see. Are they able to build off Purdue, or does this look a little bit more like Northern Illinois? Because they've had a bunch of they've had multiple examples of both of those games. Like Stanford last year, they blew out a handful of teams. But they've had the Northern Illinois, Stanford, Marshall games too. So this game is probably more interesting than Notre Dame would like it to be, based on some of the season's results.
Yeah, they go from facing the cradle of quarterbacks to facing the cradle of coaches this week. And Gus Ragland, I believe, was Miami's quarterback during that 0-6 turnaround season in 2016. And
his first start for that season, they were 0-6. And as soon as he got into the starting lineup, and he had torn his ACL, he was supposed to be the starter, tore his ACL in spring ball. So that was the soonest he could play. And then he was Miami's starting quarterback when Miami came here in 2017. As well. So yeah, there's a lot of connections. It's close with Tommy Rees. Actually went to Tommy Rees's wedding over the summer. He learned a ton from him. So there's a lot of just sort of interconnected stuff between these two programs. Yeah,
they were. I believe they missed a field goal or lost on a field goal to Mississippi State in the bowl game that year. That would have put them above 500. But it's interesting, and we'll get to the interview here shortly. You mentioned like how him and Mike Denbrock are, normal guys in a profession that doesn't always cater to normal guys. They both remind me of each other in that way. And it was funny to hear you and hear them say that. And they both remind me of like more approachable Brian Kelly's in some ways. Like yeah. Like Mike was in Brian's wedding. And Mike got basically fired by Brian at Notre Dame and got hired back by him at LSU. Chuck was attached at the hip with Brian and was always kind of like Brian Kelly light when he was at Notre Dame, and obviously succeeded him at Grand Valley State. I remember talking to a player who played for both guys, and there's a reason I say like Brian Kelly light. One of them said like, yeah, practice when Chuck yells and curses at you, like there's something a little endearing about it. Whereas when Brian Kelly would do it, it's just like, dude, like stop, like it's annoying. Yeah. Like it's not really motivating me. And I can certainly, talking to both of them the way we have, I can certainly see where those players were coming from. So we'll get to the interview here. I think unless you have anything you want to add before it, because I want to make sure everyone hears just the tone in Chuck's voice when he speaks of the reverence he has for Notre Dame. I know a lot of people say this. I know opposing coaches say this, but to hear him say it game week to me was very, very eye-opening and a little moving. Yeah, no, it was interesting to sit down with him. So yeah, we talked about that and also sort of, his fandom of Notre Dame. I wasn't expecting the interview to go this way, but we talked a little bit about Alabama 2012 and how much Notre Dame has progressed as a program since then. That was pretty interesting to hear his perspective on that too. So yeah, without further ado, let's get to Miami head coach Chuck Martin. Fan growing up on the south side of Chicago, and what your first memory of Notre Dame football was that you're like, okay, this is it.
Yeah, in our house, Southside Irish cat from Chicago, and this was back when they played the replays on Sunday morning, and we didn't have cable and all these. You could watch every football game. Like in our house, it was just you were a Notre Dame fan. Like you didn't know anything. It was like you're a Catholic, and that was part of Catholicism. It wasn't even you didn't even understand. Like, I wasn't smart enough to understand. I was probably 4 or 5 at the time, and you watched every Notre Dame game, and everything lived and died with Notre Dame football and basketball. That was sports. I didn't know, like, I barely knew the Cubs and Sox existed, but everything was revolved around Notre Dame football and basketball, and you lived and died with, every single moment, the great moments, the Anthony Davis 102-yard kickoff return. You should throw things at the TV and you shut the tee off and you pout and you cry, and to Harry Oliver's 51-yard field goal against Michigan, which unfortunately me and my brother threw tantrums because we had given up the lead and we thought the game was over, and so we didn't finish and then we found out the next day that they won. Like, those are like, to Orlando Woolridge pulling the ball off the floor. There's a scramble and Orlando Woolridge pulls the ball off the floor and shoots it in against Ralph Sampson. We beat Virginia to all. But my vivid memory is Tom Clement throwing that ball in the end zone. Like, I don't remember a lot from 73. I was 5. Mm-hmm. But I vividly remember us being backed up and Tom Clement throwing the ball in the end zone against Alabama.
Yeah,
and then I vividly remember the players hoisting air up on their shoulders. And I remember we won the national championship, and we were the greatest team in the world and the greatest place in the world. And that was Air Parsegian's my idol, sent like that's. And then Tom Clement, like, I followed Tom Clement, Hamilton Tiger Cats. Like, I can tell you, like, he was like, and again, there's been a lot of great Notre Dame players, and he was a great Notre Dame player. But like, Tom Clement for me was my first. Joe Restick. Mm-hmm. There's guys back in '73, all the tight ends. I think of Ken McAfee when I think of tight end, because that's the first Notre Dame tight end I knew was Ken McAfee, And so that's just, there wasn't anything else in our hearts. You didn't know anything else. It was just like, you eat your vegetables and you watch Notre Dame. And if Notre Dame loses, everybody's miserable. And if they win, that's the way the world should be.
So, I mean, you get to be a Notre Dame fan 365 days a year, except for this year, where you're down 1, and maybe you weren't a Notre Dame fan watching the Purdue replay last week after the Cincinnati game here. But what was it like going back in 17? And I get the sense like you'd rather watch a game there than coach a game there.
Yeah, it was awkward in 17
because you're still getting your feet under you here at that point.
It was awkward. It was awkward to. Again, the first time in my life that day that I watched a Notre Dame sporting event, I wasn't rooting for Notre Dame. It was like I was on that campus and I wasn't a Notre Dame fan. I was in the stadium, like it was, and I just worked there a few years before, so it was like, I don't know. It was awkward. I ain't gonna lie. I never felt that way before. Not that it didn't impede me from doing my job.
Right.
Like, every single play, you're trying to help your team be in position to do anything to be successful. So it wasn't like distracting but it just was, when they play that song in pregame, like, I'm one of most Notre Dame fans that gets chills. And if you're not a Notre Dame fan, that song probably doesn't give you chills, right? So, but to me, then they're going to play it in pregame, and it's going to be weird, because that song means a lot to me, but it doesn't mean a lot to me this Saturday. Like, I mean? It's like, so it's just like things like that. It's going to be hard for my family too. My family got grandfathered into being Notre Dame fans, My wife didn't grow up a Notre Dame fan, but she's, and then we worked there and had great experience there, for 4 years and made tons of friends there. And now at least most of our friends are gone. 17 went back and all my friends were still there, so that was like, now at least I won't have that where everybody I see is my person, So, and for my wife, she ran into so many people in 17 that were really like, it's like, we're the enemy now, like it's, so, yeah.
And I guess when you go back there now with the success that you've had here at Miami, is how different of a position do you feel like you are as the head coach here at Miami? 42-17 in the MAC since midway through 16 when you got on that 6-game winning streak. Like, when you went back in 17, you're still sort of getting things
trying to survive.
Survive. Like, hope this goes well.
Yeah.
Just like, and so how different does it feel coming back with like your feet under you in a different way? With where the program is here.
Yeah, obviously I don't have the same anxieties I had back then of just trying to get Miami back to the level that we knew Miami could be at. But if you don't get it back to that level, then they're going to get rid of you and get somebody else back that can get you back to that level. So different from that standpoint. I don't have all those anxieties. But there comes other stress. There's more expectations. I had no expectations. Not that I have expectations that we're going to go in there and beat Notre Dame's brains in. but there's expectations that we can go do good. Like, we're a much better program than we were back then. So the expectations, I remember, there's a time if we'd have lost Northwestern by a touchdown, we'd have been doing cartwheels around here. We were a pretty disappointed outfit 2 weeks ago that we didn't win that game, and last week, we were a pretty disappointed outfit that we didn't beat, so not that, we're delusional to think that we should be beating these Power 5 opponents, but the expectation is we can, and if we do things the right way, we're going to put ourselves in position. So obviously there's certainly more expectations to go there and play well and do good things during the game and have success.
What did you take away from your 4 years at Notre Dame as a coach that maybe has helped you here? Whether that's something BK, something how the program was run. You're a head coach before you got to Notre Dame the first time, so it wasn't like you didn't have an index of
different
coaches.
though. Different levels. So, and again, Notre Dame's a different level than here in the MAC for sure. But there's more similarities than the Grand Valley. So, like all the Division I recruiting, like we recruited in Michigan and then Chicago and a little northern Indiana and Ohio. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you go to Notre Dame, and again, now we don't recruit as nationally as Notre Dame, but I've got kids in my roster from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Texas. It's so learning that. I said earlier this week, or yesterday, I said somebody asked me about Mike Denbrock relationship, and and I said the one thing I learned, Mike had been with Ty at Notre Dame, Washington, Stanford, so I didn't know anything about national. I know how to recruit, but I didn't know anything about national. Like, how do you navigate? You can't just spin your wheels everywhere. And I learned so much from Mike of how to early on get a pulse to figure out who we actually have a chance for. And then we got to go, versus because everybody's going to listen to Notre Dame. But so that's helped me here as if I went from Grand Valley to here, it would have been more trying to figure out this more national landscape recruiting, and then just Division I football in general, and just how everything works day to day. Obviously, BK had left Grand Valley, went to Central and Cincinnati, and working his way up to Notre Dame, so he had tons of experience of how to navigate. And I'm always paying attention. I knew BK well before I got there because I'd worked for him. So, to me, I knew how he thought. So it was easy for me to watch him maybe from afar and know why he's navigating things a certain way, And then, it's a smaller scale here by wide margin, but just how to navigate through good times, bad times, in between times. That's what, BK is the master of, always figuring out how to get his team believing they can win a game, whether they came off a big win, whether they came off a big loss, whether they came off something intermediate, whether it was an injury, whether it was something, he always could find a way to. And again, I was around him 8 years at two different spots, and that's always what we talked about this a little bit Sundays, and how to get my team back heading in the direction at that moment we want them heading, because all the outside influences push them different directions.
Right. You mentioned Mike Denbrock, a pretty normal guy in an industry that doesn't allow a lot of normal guys. What is your relationship like with him, and what's it going to be like you went up against him here at Cincinnati, but to do it at Notre Dame, what's that going to be like?
Well, one, it'll be great to see Mike, because I don't see Mike very often. We do talk, but he's busy and I'm busy, so but it'll be him, me, Breeken. He loves Breeken, he loves Pat. There'll be more than your cordial high fives. There'll be some embraces in pregame, and they'll be meaningful embraces. And just, I think we're insanely similar. I don't know, you'd have to ask Mike, but I think if you say he's a normal guy, I think we're two of the normal guys in this world. We're just, I didn't know him back in the day, but I don't think he's changed one iota. The one thing, he's the one guy, when I got to Notre Dame, he had been at that level. Not only Notre Dame, but Washington, Stanford. He'd been and he was the most normal guy in the building. He was the least of the, impressed with himself because he has status of Notre Dame. That had nothing to do with Mike Denbrock. If Mike Denbrock's impressed with himself is because he's a good person, he's a hard worker, and he's a good family guy, and he's a good friend. That's why he should be impressed with himself. It had nothing to do that he's, Coach Jay Downs, the Heisman Trophy winner, not changing Mike Denbrock. A lot of people now, they got all the answers. Mike's just going to work and working hard.
Yeah. What just in terms of this game, you flip on the tape of Notre Dame at Purdue. What strikes you first about this Notre Dame team?
Yeah, just they're I've said it for years, and as since I left, to me, their talent they're getting closer and closer. I know they're not there yet. I'm one of the more realistic Notre Dame fans, but I am a fan. But whenever they don't beat one of the top, but it has changed. Like, I was there in 12. There was some extenuation. We're saying 12. We could have played better in that game in 12, but we were overmatched.
Yeah.
Now, Zach Martin and Chris Watt were not overmatched, but the rest of my linemen were overmatched. Eifert was not overmatched, but Theo Riddick was not overmatched. But there was guys that were overmatched,
Right.
and it was obvious, And I watch as the years gone on, and they've gotten closer and closer, and still not where they want to be yet. I get it. There's still a gap there, but the gap to me is shortening, and that's what I see on tape. They have big explosive athletes. They're not the top of the mountain yet, but they're dang close.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw what Manti said, since he's got on my side of the thing with media, but he was recounting sort of in the tunnel before the Alabama game. I think he saw Fluker, I can't remember the other lineman, walk by, and he's like, all right, like this is different.
Right.
Does Notre Dame looks a little bit more like the teams they're trying to catch than the team you guys were with in 2012?
I totally believe that. I'd like to say the 12 is the best team ever. Biased, right?
Yeah.
But realistically, 12 went the fur. We got to the. No one's got. So you can say but they're closer now.
Mm-hmm.
Me, the football coach, says they're close now. They're closer on talent and we had a great team and we were close, but we weren't close enough. I'm not knocking our guys. Those guys mean everything to me. But I just watch them. Even those games, I see they're more, they're more competitive all over the field. They're like, you watch Ohio State. Ohio State, as much talent as I was, Notre Dame kicked their butt in the trenches last year. I mean, that's they kicked their butt. Every third and short, Ohio State couldn't run it. Every third and short, Notre Dame could run it. And that there's a time it wasn't that way when you're going against, as a talented as team as there is in the country, and it was toe to toe. Like, we didn't win enough physical confrontations in 2012 against Alabama. We won, but not like. Then I watched the playoff state. I'm like, God, they are really close. Like, they're really, really, really close.
Yeah. And I guess the Notre Dame fan in you, when you watch, do you watch them differently? Like, once this week comes and goes, can you get back to just enjoying Notre Dame football again?
I just root for Notre Dame. Yeah.
Okay.
I just root for Notre Dame. Yeah, it's weird because I say this is, if I went back again, would it be different? I don't know. Like, I went there and I didn't really enjoy Notre Dame. Like, the least I enjoyed Notre Dame was my 4 years of work there, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I was beyond my dream job, but it was a job, and it was stressful, and we weren't very good the first couple of years, and you're just trying and then for me it was personal because the only reason I left Grand Valley was not to go Power 5. BK was at Cincinnati in the Big East and tried to hire me every year. So it was Notre Dame and I was there on a mission to get Notre Dame back to being where we were relevant again. Like, we had been good we were kind of the point where people were saying you can't be good there anymore. And I'm like, that's bull crap. You can be good at Notre Dame. I don't know what it looks like, So I want to be a part of trying to help make it good. So to me, and then 4 years came and went, and we did some great things, obviously, and I have tons of great memories. But I didn't enjoy being in the stadium game day was no chills for me when I worked there. It was bizarre,
really?
No chills.
But when you're back in 17,
yes,
you felt it again.
Totally. And when I watched on TV,
Okay.
The year I left, the next time I watched them on TV, I got chills of being a Notre Dame fan. I went to my niece got married in the Basilica this year, and I walk on that campus. But when I worked there, it was super cool, and I loved the campus. But it just wasn't. It was weird. And again, I don't know why. My wife is always like, "Hey, you got beyond where you ever. Your dream job was Milliken. Like, when I married you, you said you want to be the head coach. Like, what do you want? You said you want to be the head coach of Milliken someday. That was my goal." That was my long-term goal, She's like, and then you got to Notre Dame, the place you love, and I feel like you didn't even enjoy it. I'm like, I certainly enjoyed it, but I didn't feel it day to day. And as soon as I leave, it's
all back.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'm just back being a fan. Like, as soon as I took this job, I was just a Notre Dame fan. They weren't, I mean, I know we're both Division I, but they're not the competitor for me. I know they are this weekend, but so it wasn't like, well, I don't have to. I didn't go to Michigan and now you got to hate Notre Dame, right? Like, I went to Miami, Ohio, and it's okay. I can just go back and be a Notre Dame fan. root for I just root for Notre Dame every week in football, basketball. Like, it doesn't matter what the sport is, you know.
All right. If you're a Notre Dame fan, like Chuck Martin is one of us. Like that has to be the vibe that you would come away with. Cause like I knew he was a Notre Dame fan, but like I didn't know that it went like that deep with him. So it was pretty cool to hear him sort of like unpack a lot of that stuff about how Chuck Martin and Notre Dame came to be a thing.
Quote, it was part of Catholicism, end quote.
Yes.
He was quoting basketball plays from the 70s. I think there are diehard Notre Dame fans who couldn't name you 2 players on this year's men's basketball.
Man, he got Joe Restic in there. Like Chuck Martin. We're sports fans, so like sports fans, we enjoy like the naming old random guys.
Yeah.
He would be great at the naming random old Notre Dame player game. I mean, the Harry Oliver story. Come on.
I feel like every spring game we're always like, oh, who's going to be the junior jab? Like he could go all the way back to like when spring games probably weren't even a thing. But it's if Thomas Hammock was in tears after beating Notre Dame, imagine what Chuck Martin would be like. It's funny though. Like he's an original, and I know that phrase gets overused a little bit in this day and age, but to hear him speak that way about another place in this era of NIL and portal and this and that, I don't know how you can't appreciate it, even if you're a Miami of Ohio fan, and not just appreciate him and what he means to college football. I imagine you felt the same way I did when he left in 2013, at the end of 2013 for Miami of Ohio. My thought was, all right, he's going to try to get back here in a few years. This is his dream job. He's Brian Kelly light, like we said. He gets some head coaching experience at the D1 level. And if everything goes great, he comes back in a few years and is a head coach. Now, that's, if he's mapping this out in his like best case scenario brain, that's how it works. I don't think anyone saw him staying there 11 years. And some people may look at that and not understand the makeup of the MAC in college football and think that's an insult. It's not. Like, it's a compliment. When you're at that level, you either get fired or you get the hell out of there the first time you have a good season. Yeah. And Chuck has been there 11 years now. He took over a program that I think was winless when he first got there. He was probably going to get fired after 3 years, or at least it looked that way when they were 0-6 in year 3. And he engineers one of the greatest in-season turnarounds in college football history. And, oh, by the way, he comes back and wins the MAC title for a second time last year. Like, that just does not happen. It is incredibly difficult to sustain success and to rebuild your program in this day and age when anyone good is leaving for the Power 5, Power 4. Like Chuck Martin, Jason Kendall, Toledo, like, I have all the respect in the world for those guys. Like, it is much harder. I don't mean to make this a comparison thing, but like, it's much harder to be a really good MAC coach as to be a really good Notre Dame, Michigan, or Ohio State coach. It just is.
Yeah, so during my time there, I spent some time with their athletic director, Dave Sellier. And one point he made was like, the MAC is unlike the other conferences, even like, Mountain West, like the Group of 5 conferences. And he said, in the sense of like the difference in budget between the biggest budget in the MAC and the lowest budget in the MAC, it's the smallest window of any conference. And his point was just like, in this conference, at least, like, it's, can you coach or not? Because if you can, like, it's going to show. And if you can't, there's nowhere to hide because like the rosters are very similar. Chuck's done it there. Now he's got, Brett Gabbert as quarterback, 6-year senior, coming back from a gruesome injury last year. I don't think Gabbert is as far back along as like maybe they would like it to be, just because it was such a serious injury. Like if any quarterback should have been able to open with UMass, Gabbert should have been able to do it. Instead, they opened with 3 Power 5s, which I think is part of the reason that Chuck is still at Miami, is that he has not been able to sort of have many, other than last year, of those like Cinderella seasons, and then you get into the MAC, because instead of opening with like 1 Power 5, this year they have 3. Usually they have 2 because they always play Cincinnati. It's their big rivalry game. this year's Northwestern and Notre Dame. They played at Iowa a few years ago. They played Northwestern before and beat them. They beat Cincinnati last year. So it's like, you cover the coaching carousel more than I do, but like, it's what have you done for me just this last year? That's it. And I think that there was a time when Chuck went to Miami of Ohio, I think he was maybe 45 or so. Like he would have been a young Power 5 hire. And then within just like 3 or 4 years, it was like he would be a really old Power 5 hire. Like the kinds of coaches getting Power 5 jobs these days are a lot different than they were 10 years ago when Chuck went to Miami in the first place. So I think it's been a good fit. But I would think even in an honest moment, Chuck would be like, yeah, I can't believe I'm here for 11 years. Like it usually doesn't work out that way.
I bring this up just because in the news today, Adrian Wojnarowski, the ESPN NBA reporter, retired to go to St. Bonaventure. And a lot of people on social media have been recycling an old interview he did where he talks about how being an NBA scoop master is easy because he came up writing about high schools. And you're in Bumble, whatever state, keeping your own stats. Parents are on your ass. No one's reading you. You've got no press box. You got nothing. You're doing everything on your own. And he says, like, this is really easy compared to that. And I think, like, when you see a guy like Chuck Martin, a successful coach at a smaller level, they would have that approach if they ever got a big job, like with Michigan. Like even he was like, when I got to Notre Dame, people said we can't be relevant. Hell yes, we can be relevant. We're Notre Dame, and we're going to prove that. One other point on that, and I wrote about this last March, and I will add he signed an extension in April, Chuck, but he leaves Notre Dame for Miami of Ohio at the end of the 2013 season. Yahoo Sports reported at the time he was making $650,000 a year as Notre Dame's OC. His Miami head coaching salary was $450,000. 10 years later, Mike Denbrock, who he worked with at Notre Dame, does his whole tour at Cincinnati and LSU, et cetera, comes back to Notre Dame. His salary is $2.25 million per year as Notre Dame's OC. So in that time, the Notre Dame OC position had a 350% pay increase in salary. And the MAC coach, 22%. Now, Martin has since signed an extension. The student paper, the Miami Student, reported it was for $850,000 a year. So he doubled his salary 100%. Good for him. But that just shows like how out of whack and out of touch everything is at that level versus the blue blood level. And Chuck sounds every bit as enthusiastic right now being the Miami head coach as I'm sure he was when he took the job on day one in 2013. And I think that's a testament to him.
As someone who I sat in their corrections film meeting on Sunday after they lost to Cincinnati and they felt like they should win. Chuck has plenty of enthusiasm for Miami football. It was, if I had hair, it would have been like on edge, because it was a guy who was as passionate about college football and coaching today as he was, when he was the head coach at Grand Valley 20 years ago. Not much has changed. He felt like exactly the same guy as the guy I got to know at Notre Dame from 2010 to 2013.
And look how many, you mentioned it, but look at how many former players from the Notre Dame days are on that staff and have followed him and are still in close touch with him. I know for a fact the Grand Valley State guys felt the same way.
Yeah. When I talked to his offensive coordinator, Pat Welsh, and I was like, he's been with them for 11 years. And I was like, why? And I was like, he's the greatest guy in the world to work for. Like guys don't want to leave to go do something else. He's one of a kind that way. So it'll be interesting to sort of see how that, what emotions he has this weekend. Cause I do want to see him and Denbrock hook up for the first time, like out in pregame and just what that's like. Cause it's, I think that will mean a lot to both of them.
Absolutely. I think it's prediction time. You're 0-3 against the spread this year, although you finally got one outright one.
Straight up right.
Yeah. Picked an 8-point game and a 59-point effort, but
I am unfortunate. I'm a little bit biased this week after spending time with Miami. They're an easy group to sort of pull for, so I'll have Miami to cover. But like Notre Dame is way better, and being with the Miami staff last week, they were watching the Purdue film, and once it got to Jadarian Price's run to like run out the clock at halftime, they're just like, what the hell is this? And they made that point with their roster many times over. But I think that Notre Dame's offense is still not one that I would trust to go run away with a game, assuming it was going against a functional defense, which Purdue did not have last week. So I'll go Notre Dame 38, Miami 14. So that would be just covering for Miami. I think that Miami will have enough tricks up its sleeve to have some success against Notre Dame. But I mean, look, Chuck said this, I think, before the 2017 game, where it's just like, look, this is like going out to recess and the other guy has the first 85 picks. Watching Miami's practice, I'm not sure I would go that far. Their inside linebacker, Matt Salopek, everyone just calls him Sally there. I mean, he had, 130 tackles last year. They have two, I think, very good receivers who will have a chance to, if they can protect Brett Gabbert, they will have a chance to do something. Cade McDonald, number 15, and Javon Tracy, I think, are both sort of worth watching this weekend if you're Notre Dame, to sort of see how Notre Dame tries to match up with them and how Miami tries to get them in space. But Miami they've got a few tools. I'm just not sure they're going to be able to take Gabbert and protect him for the course of the entire game.
I'll go Notre Dame 31-10. That's a Miami cover. The line is 28. The over-under is 43.5, so that's just under. Miami is a veteran defense by max standards, and they have a veteran offensive line, again, by max standards. So, like, I don't think it's going to be like last week against Purdue. I think a veteran coach and operation like Chuck is enough to not be overwhelmed by the moment, while Notre Dame, having already got caught by a MAC team of a similar stature, is not going to take this one for granted either. There's still a lot of questions we have about this Notre Dame offense. Still a lot we would like to see from this Notre Dame offense. And I think we'll see some of it, but it's not going to be anything like last week. Although you watch a game like last week, you remind yourself that Purdue is a power conference team, and you think, boy, like, can Notre Dame be really, 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 really good this year if they could somehow channel that every single week? And let's face it, they're not. I mean, Louisville next week will be a test, no question about it. But it's not like the schedule is filled with USCs until they actually play USC at the end of the season. They don't play a true road game again until USC at the end of the season. So I think they get a few things worked out offensively. I think they jump out to an early lead. I think there's enough respect between the two programs that this one doesn't get too out of hand. So I'll go Notre Dame 31-10. Not to say they don't respect Purdue, but they had their four stringers in. I mean, whoever's on the field should be trying.
I don't think Purdue respected the concept of defensive structure. They had their safety. You don't put your safety 50 yards from the line of scrimmage.
Don't put your quarterback out there the last drive down 66-7.
Oh my God. Yeah. Poor Hudson Card. I felt bad for him. I know the Miami staff felt bad for him watching the tape of that game too. So, but yeah, it needs to be a low fuss game for Notre Dame. They need to take another step forward. I think that they will, but a week from now when they play Louisville, different set of circumstances, different kind of opponent. But yeah, this can be a chance for Notre Dame's offense in particular to take another step forward. Be curious to see what Riley Leonard looks like, because look, that's the part where Notre Dame needs to grow the most. When I went back and looked at his completions last week against Purdue, I believe all but two of them were within like 2 or 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. He did not complete a pass longer than 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage all last week. That they have to get that fixed moving forward to have a chance to have the season go where they want it to go.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone joining us again live. We'll be live every Wednesday. Usually going to aim for the noon Eastern time slot, although we will keep you aware of that every single week. Thank you to Chuck Martin and the Miami of Ohio football staff for hosting Pete and Chuck for joining us. Again, thanks for all joining us. Please subscribe on iTunes, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and to YouTube as well. That's all I've got. Pete, any other breadcrumbs from your trip to Oxford?
No, that's a wrap. It'll be a very detail-rich story. Probably a few laughs along the way too, based on my time there with the staff. So it's a good time. I'm fascinated to sort of see how it all fits together on Saturday. Kind of knowing what a game plan looks like and how it was structured, and then get to actually watch it happen or not happen. It live is going to be a lot of fun. So it should be a great story on Monday. I really look forward to writing it and sharing it with all of my readers here over at The Athletic. So on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Independent. He's Matt with some great merch. You can check that out. I'm Pete, just wearing our usual Roback stuff. You can also go to roback.com, promo code Irish for 20% off. So until we get together on Saturday for our post-game episodes, you've been listening to another episode of The Independent. Thanks for being with us.